starting the meeting, Eva. I didn't expect it. Thank you.
No, you were starting the meeting, so I was like, okay, let me stay and see how it is. Okay, so you are co-host, so I'll make you as a host. How does it work since we're both on the same account?
I know. Oh yeah, I know. I don't know. Oh yeah, I logged in. I think I can change my.
Let me see. Let me try on my end.
I could always rejoin and then sign. I can always sign out and then rejoin.
Okay, I'm changing you as the.
Okay.
Okay. I think it works.
Perfect. I can rename myself.
Okay, so you're all set. Have a good night, everyone.
Appreciate it.
What if we don't get a quorum?
What if we don't get more than 3 people?
I don't know. I think we can technically still have our, Michael, I see you. Just give me a second, please. We can always stream that. And I think we can always stream this. Susan, I'm trying to promote you, but it's not, and I don't know if you want to be promoted or not. Let me get Amy. Okay. I'll just give those a few minutes. Let me just quickly share my screen. Maybe some people are getting their question answered on the conflict of interest training. I'm not sure. I know Kristen will be joining us a little later. Let me.
It was a good session.
He was very entertaining. Yes.
I like that guy very much. He brought it to life.
He did. He did. Okay, let me just get my deck. And I'll open the meeting in just a second. So, hey, Brad, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
So let's see, we've got 3 of us on the committee here. We can always note as people join us later that we, okay, Donna and Susan, just give me 1 second. I can always note that we didn't have a quorum. I don't think we're going to have a resolution out of this meeting today because there's more fact finding that we need to do. But I will let all of you know, the ones that are on the committee here decide that. Let me just quickly put this up. All right. Okay, share my screen. Okay. Great. So just see who's in. Just like moves everything when you change. Oh, there it is. Oops. Okay. While we wait just a few more minutes. Okay, Donna, I'm promoting you again. And Susan, I'm promoting you again. All right. Okay, I see Susan came on and I don't see Donna yet. Okay. So I'll just note that it's 7:35 p.m. and we will just make a note in the minutes that we do not have a quorum, but I don't think that's going to impact us too much on if we were to have a resolution, it would just, if we had one, it would go to the full board saying that there was not a quorum. So, so with that, it's 7:36. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is Manhattan Community Board 2. This is the Economic Development and Small Business Committee meeting. And our agenda this evening is ADA Title III lawsuits by serial plaintiffs, what small businesses need to know about accessibility compliance. That's a word I missed there. And we've got Amy McCloskey, owner of Madam X, and Brad Hamilton, who is her partner, is also affiliated with Madam X and spent a lot of the day-to-day working on this case. I had sent through the article that was in the Post about their case. So we'll just have a discussion with them. I know Amy will not be on camera, but we'll chime in, and we have Brad here on camera. So, and then after that, if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak about what they heard, or if they have a similar experience, we're happy to take that into the record. We'll move to a quick business session, and then open the floor for any new business, and then we'll adjourn. So hopefully I'll have everyone out of here before 8:30 at the latest. I know it's been a long week if you're on the board and you've been doing all of the mandatory training. So I thank you, both the committee members and board members that have joined us this evening. So with that, I'm going to unshare my screen for right now. And Brad and Amy, I've got a just one slide that has just some Google Map images of just the exterior. So if that's helpful to put in context on screen, I can share that as it becomes relevant. It's just one slide with like 3 images. So with that, quickly before we get started, I'll quickly introduce who we have here from the community board. We've got Bo Riccobono, who's on the committee, Janet Liff, who's also on the committee, Michael Levine, who is a board member, Susan Kent, who is also the first vice chair and is a board member, and Carter Booth, who is the former past chair. Our goal for this evening is to kind of start this series of discussions about these ADA Title III lawsuits. And tonight we're going to hear directly from owners in CB2 who have experienced this firsthand. And then we will move into other parts, talking to SBS and MOPD in our next one with a presentation, and then having advocates from the disability community come and speak to us about their experience. So we want to kick it off with Brad and Amy. If you'd like to introduce yourselves to everyone and kind of tell us like an overview of your case and what you've dealt with.
Well, hello all. I have a dreadful head cold and I'm not camera ready. So you're getting the pretty picture. Brad's feeling fine, so you've got him on the screen. I'll start just with saying that Madam X has been in the neighborhood for 25 years. We have one of those awkward buildings where the entry at street level, you have to walk down 8 steps to get into the bar. The building at its widest, including the walls, is 18 feet. So putting in anything for accessibility purposes is not really an option. So we kind of ignored it, other than for the purpose of, you know, we make the bathroom accessible. We've made as much as an ability to navigate around once you're downstairs accessible. It's all on one floor. We've had people in wheelchairs come into the bar before. We've, you know, organized it so we could get them down the steps. But other than accommodating as best we can with the physical location once they're there, there's no way to put in a ramp or an elevator or any other kind of thing to allow people to get in. And we pretty much just ignored it until we got sued. Brad is amazing and managed to help us throughout to get us in the best position possible based on the fact that there are, and Brad knows the technical terms for this and I do not, but there are exceptions made for businesses like ours, but that doesn't prevent people from, these kind of awful, bottom feeding lawyers from taking advantage of the situation and putting you through the ringer. And as anybody who owns a small business in this city understands, the moment you let your insurance company get involved in any of this, they just throw money at the problem to let it go away. But that just encourages these bad actors to keep acting badly. And I decided to fight because I'm stubborn that way. And even though it cost us more out of pocket than it would to have just paid them off through our insurance company, I'd rather give a good, solid, upright, righteous lawyer my money rather than this. I'm not really allowed to say the terms that are coming out of my trucker mouth to describe this guy. So I don't know the direction you want this to go in, but 99.9% of people, as far as I understand it, even if there's nothing they can do to make a place ADA compliant, fully ADA compliant, just pay it off immediately without even thinking about it, because the cost to fight it is typically, out of range of what most people are willing to spend.
And Amy, quickly to clarify, when you say pay it off, you mean just pay a settlement of a couple of $10,000, right?
$10,000, $20,000, $30,000, yes. But the insurance company will take care of that. Brad,
I mean, well, actually, that I got to interrupt because a lot of people do not have liability insurance that covers this sort of thing. You have to find out from your carrier and from your lawyer what it is. But what Amy said in the opening, which is that we just ignored it, thinking that we were okay because of the limitations of our building, is very typical. A lot of owners will just sort of ignore it, hope that it doesn't happen, and it unfortunately it does, because virtually every business, if you look at it closely enough, there's going to be some kind of ADA compliance violation. And here's the kicker: even if there is no violation whatsoever, you're 100% compliant, that does not stop a lawyer from suing you, alleging a lack of compliance. And once you've been sued over this allegation, your case is now in the hands of a federal court, and the federal court judges who handle these things tread very carefully because it's an alleged violation of the federal law. And so what that means is it kickstarts a whole process whereby you, as a business owner, you learn very quickly that you are screwed, essentially. You could have a completely compliant business, or you could have an allegation against you where there's some minor violations that you could quickly fix, quote, and cure, as they say under the law. So, okay, well, this handheld thing, this handbar, this rail needs to be a little higher, or the toilet is the wrong size, or a couple little steps here that are like could be troublesome for somebody who's in a wheelchair. You could fix those in a matter of a day. It doesn't matter. Once you're in the system, what happens with these lawyers is they know how to delay and delay and delay without costing them much money, but costs you plenty because you have to hire a lawyer to defend yourself. So even people who want to fight can't because it's too expensive.
So even if you're compliant, you still can get sued and you get into the system and then have to spend that money to then go through the system to then only find out that you were correct. Plus
yeah, and yes, exactly. And how these lawsuits are typically generated is that lawyers have people who are going around looking for older buildings where it's impossible for you to install a ramp or a lift or an elevator. The physical limitation of the skinny building like we have is typical of many places in the village or elsewhere in the city, Chinatown, what have you, where it's just not possible.
Places like Chinatown are particularly subject to these bad acting lawyers.
Now, the other thing is that under the law, you are allowed to have a building that is not fully ADA compliant. The law has language in it that says that if it's extraordinarily expensive, or if you can't make a change that would be reasonable. If you can't make a change that's reasonable or it's extraordinarily expensive, then you don't have to do it. You're essentially exempt from those changes that would be too onerous to you as a business or physically impossible in some cases, as is the case. So it doesn't matter that there's this provision that says you're okay if it's too expensive or unreasonable to make the change that will allow you to be fully compliant. The lawsuit still proceeds, and it's that system that has been created that is so difficult to get out of, because like I said, the lawyers who file these things know how to just keep continuing to keep delaying, filing motions, scheduling things and then canceling them. And each of those little steps you have to respond to a federal judge, and that means hours on the clock for a lawyer. I mean, the amount of money you would be shocked. It goes into the 5 figures, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And in our case, yeah, the thing is that there's no way to get around it, and most people just don't bother and just throw it to their insurance company to pay these guys off. It's legalized graft is what it is.
Well, and the troubling thing is that sometimes if your carrier doesn't have, if your policy doesn't have it covered, if your liability insurance or general liability insurance doesn't include a payout to an attorney for an alleged ADA violation, well, then it comes out directly out of your pocket, which does happen. In our case, there was some question as to whether our carrier would actually cover it or not. So sometimes it comes right out of your pocket.
And so if you do have that general liability coverage that does cover a payout, is that a one-time payout, or does that depend? Is it every time it happens? So it's just a chronic.
Every time it happens.
It's every time.
You can have somebody sue you on Monday, right? And then let's say you get lucky and for some reason they withdraw the suit on Tuesday, they can sue you again on Wednesday, or a different person could sue you on Thursday. You could have multiple people suing you at the same time. So there is no limit on how many times you can get sued, including by the same people.
The bar right next to us has been sued twice by the same lawyer.
The other troubling thing about this, if you're trying to think about, well, how do I navigate this? How do I protect myself? The so-called plaintiffs in this, the injured parties, let's say a wheelchair user who is denied access to your place of business because there's no ramp or because the bathroom isn't ADA compliant, that person is only entitled to get about $500 from whatever happens with the lawsuit. The $500 constitutes the reimbursement for the filing fees, basic administrative costs. The bulk of that money, 95% of the money that you're paying, is going to the lawyer. So this is a business that enriches the lawyers who sue, not the litigants, not the plaintiffs who are the injured parties. So that's another part of it. That's why these lawyers do file so many of these suits, because they're boilerplate. They have them all ready to go, and all they need to do is plug your name and your business into a ready to go lawsuit, and bam, once it's filed, now you're on the hook. And so, like, the vast majority of these cases wind up getting settled quickly, where you're just either you or your insurance company on your behalf is paying anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000 per suit.
Wow. And again, it could just happen again from the same person. You could have multiple of these going on at one time because you're vulnerable. And even if you do, like, so right now, and I know we're kind of veering off the questions, I really want this to be a dialogue. So if anyone else also has questions, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get to them, because this is just such a great flow happening. Brad, if someone, just lost my train of thought. if someone were to, what's the fix, right?
Well, okay, so there are a couple of ways that you can marginally help yourself, right? You can have someone come in and do an assessment of your place of business and point out those things that could be named as violations, right? And fix them. And I mean, obviously, as a business, you want to encourage people with disabilities to be able to use your place of business. You want to be open to all customers. So a really good and fairly inexpensive first step is to have an assessment, have an architect come in, and there's plenty of them, like good players who aren't out there to rip you off, who will just come in and spend a couple of hours in your place walking around measuring things and what have you, and say, okay, well, you're pretty compliant, but X, Y, and Z should be fixed. So that's the first step, is to fix things that you can fix. If there are things that you can't fix, like for example, the ramp thing that we dealt with at Madam X, where it's physically impossible to install a ramp or a lift or an elevator, what you can do is you can do things to try to mitigate the easy pickings kind of approach that some of these lawyers employ. And by that, I mean like having like a little sign that says, ring this doorbell if you need assistance getting down our steps. You can put little stickers if you can get there are ADA groups that will say, that they will say we support you because we came in and saw all the things that you're doing. So you can have stickers on your window that say, ADA friendly or whatever it is, right? But the main thing for a ramp or a lift is to be able to have a little sign with a bell, so that somebody who wheels up, and put yourself in the place of a wheelchair user who rolls up to your business and there's no way for them to get in because there's no ramp or lift. Well, what are they supposed to do? Well, if there's a bell that's kind of on the lower side, I mean, not super tall, but low, and it says, if you need help, ring it, well, that can help you. It's not going to prevent you from being sued, but it can help.
Okay.
The other thing is, just one other little quick thing, besides the physical elements of your space, you also have to be aware that more and more businesses are being sued over the ADA violations that have to do with people who are visually impaired or who are hearing impaired, right? So if you have a website, you should do the same thing that you do with your physical space. You should have someone evaluate your website to make sure that your website has elements, and those are not really expensive. It's not complicated. It's not expensive. It's straightforward. Make sure that you have a way for someone who is hearing or visually impaired who can engage with your business online.
That's great. And that's a great point, because the Title III does cover those other elements. And I have heard of the website thing catching businesses off guard. So I'm glad that you covered that. Janet had a question in the chat about the plaintiffs being preyed on, and that kind of goes as well. Like, wasn't that the case here with the gentleman that you ended up visiting in Queens? Could you just kind of touch on that?
Yeah, so I went and talked to the named plaintiff in the suit. He wasn't altogether there. He was suffering from cognitive problems from having been an alcoholic. At least that's what he said to me. That's how he explained it to me, as well as physical problems. And he didn't seem to be aware. Didn't seem to be knowledgeable about the lawsuit. He didn't remember Madam X. He couldn't recall having gone there. And I told him that this particular lawsuit involved a lawyer who had just been arrested. Well, 2 months after he filed this lawsuit against Madam X, he was arrested and charged with federal fraud in 2 different districts, in Florida and New York. So I said, do you know that your lawyer is facing federal fraud charges? And he said he did not know that. So we thought, oh, wow, okay, perfect. This guy is a dupe. He's been roped in, as a straw plaintiff, so to speak, on behalf of this scheming lawyer. But the scheming lawyer just continued to keep the case going and ultimately produced this guy as a witness. He was deposed. And during the deposition, the lawyer was feeding him answers. I mean, this is just ridiculous. He's like, this plaintiff in quotes, is saying, well, when did you go to Madam X? And then the lawyer is like whispering in his ear, like, and so he's answering, and we objected to this, and ultimately the lawyer who represented this plaintiff was sanctioned substantially for coaching his witness. But just to give you an idea of how frustrating this process is, it doesn't matter that the guy told me that he never was at Madam X, didn't remember it at all. Didn't matter that the lawyer was coaching him during his testimony, during his deposition. It didn't matter that he had been arrested and charged with federal fraud. None of these things matter at all. It didn't matter at all. What mattered is how is the case going? What are the facts of the case? What is the discovery part of this phase, which is all the fact gathering? And that process just kept playing out over a period of about 3 years. We fought this for nearly 3 years. So you can imagine the costs were astronomical.
Yeah.
And if we hadn't gotten a lawyer who was willing to give us a break on it, we never could have afforded it.
How did this lawsuit impact your business on a day-to-day basis? I mean, when you started, you didn't know it was going to last 3 years, but kind of like, how did it affect your day-to-day, kind of knowing this was looming over, either, emotionally and financially?
Both.
And then on an annual basis, knowing like, here we go, another year. And this is going on.
For the most part, I got lucky. Brad took care of most of the day-to-day lawyer stuff because he speaks legalese and I don't. But when it comes down to the day-to-day, as with any business, you just put your head down and get the stuff done that you can get done and then move on with your business. You're lucky if you have somebody like Brad in your life who can take care of the dealing with the lawyer aspect. Otherwise, it would have been, a much more present thing in our lives. But the first thing that Brad told me that we needed to do was fix any little thing that we actually could fix, which is what he brought up earlier. If you have any ADA compliance issues that are just throw a little money at it and make it go away. We had to put in a toilet that was higher. We had to get rid of the pedestal on the sink so that the wheelchair could slide under it. There were small things that we could do. We needed to put in a different kind of grab bar, and we did all of those things immediately. Another thing we did was who was that, Brad? It was an ADA compliance person come in and do an analysis. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what happens in a lawsuit is what I'm advising businesses to do before you get sued, which is they do a report. An expert comes in and does a report on your place. So in our case, the person that sued us, they had to hire someone. That person came in and did a report. And then you have to have your own expert rebut that report. To say, oh, technically you said we had violation 45732. Actually, that's the wrong number for the violation, and you mismeasured our bathroom. And so there's all these technical things that have to be fleshed out over these alleged violations. So that's how these lawsuits proceed. They can't continue unless they provide an expert's report. And so they do have to, that's the one expense that the plaintiff side has, is they have to hire someone to come in and do an expert report. That's how it gets started, really.
You have to hire your own expert to,
yes.
So more money.
Rebut that. Yes, exactly.
Michael Levine, I'd love to call on you for a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this information. There's something I would like you to clarify, which you said early in the presentation. If you seek to pay off in the beginning to avoid all the legal action, where does the money go? Does any of the money go to an agency? I know you said the plaintiff would get them like $500. Does it all go to a lawyer, or does it go to any other place?
Virtually 95% of the money goes to the lawyer. And the reason it goes to the lawyer and rather than to the plaintiff is when this law was written, when this ADA law was written in the 90s, ironically, they anticipated that there might be, predatory action and abuse, right? So what they did was they said, well, let's disincentivize the plaintiffs, right? We're not gonna open the door for plaintiffs to be given, $100,000 or $1 million because they weren't able to enter a candle store because there was no ramp, right? We don't want that. But what they did say is that the attorneys were entitled to reasonable fees for initiating this action against these establishments. Now, reasonable fees in a legitimate and reasonable world would be, okay, well, the lawyer worked X number of hours. Let's see that, like billable hours. Like if you were a client, how many hours did the lawyer actually work to do this? And then at the end of the case, the attorney would be entitled to those hours. But what happens is the hours that they actually have to spend to initiate this is, they can do it in less than an hour. They can file a lawsuit against their business in less than an hour. But when it comes time to being paid, they want to get paid $30,000. Why? Because they know that over the course of the next year or two fighting you, they can easily rack up that much in legal fees. So,
and you are the one that pays all the fees. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, if you lose, yes. If you lose, and remember, this is a lawsuit that's been filed against your business that says you have a ramp that's not compliant. If it turns out that your ramp is not compliant, guess what? You were in violation of federal law. So
do you have to pay a fine to a federal agency or not?
No, you have to pay the lawyer's bill. That's what you have to pay.
I understand. Thank you for the answers. It's very disheartening to hear, but thank you for the answer.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, and this is why most businesses, and I've spoken to a number and Brad's spoken to even more, just pay it off. Just throw it to their insurance company. Legitimized graft. They've made it impossible for, one of the things Brad is going to be doing is hopefully being able to publish a much larger story on fixing the problem, because right now there's no recourse for people like us other than to toss it to our insurance company to pay them off.
Great.
And so just a quick little sort of insight as to the reasonable way that could be how the system could be reformed. One very quick way would be to cap the amount that can be paid to the lawyer, but also a very quick fix would be to allow for a cure period. In other words, instead of going right to this this very involved legal process, you get sued over an alleged ADA violation. You have 30 days or 40 days or whatever to fix the problem. And if you fix the problem, then the judge has an ability to have the court evaluate what was alleged and what you've done. And if you fix the problem, then that's the end of the lawsuit, right? That has been floated as an idea here and there. It has never been passed by any legislation. So that's really a pretty easy way to kind of collapse the fraud part of this industry.
And Brad, I assume that would need to come at the federal level then?
Yes. Well, okay. So it's also complicated because there's state law and federal law that work together on this. So, but yeah, if the state legislators were to pass a New York law that allowed that, then the federal courts would have to pay attention to that and take it into consideration. But yeah, it's federal law here, so
right.
It's a pretty big bar to hurdle.
Right. I was looking at a graph showing ADA Title III lawsuits, and New York is the #1 place where those happen. So that's good. This is good to connect that. Thank you. I'm going to call next on Carter Booth.
Hey guys, so I have a question for you. During COVID, it was revealed that a lot of businesses, their insurance policies were vastly different. And a lot of insurance policies for long-standing businesses were signed a long time ago. So they have broader coverages on those policies. I mean, in talking to people, have you found that to be the case? I mean, this, with the evolution of this type of lawsuit becoming more common, is that do new businesses just get excluded from that type of coverage unless they pay a significant premium versus older policies that are written in a different manner? I mean, is that?
Yeah, I think that's generally true. But again, like every business has a different carrier, and every carrier has different policies. So and unfortunately, yeah, the newer policies have started to take this into consideration because they know what it can cost. I mean, it's like anything, you know, like a trip and fall or any kind of suit. If there's an explosion of cases, then insurance companies get, you know, jittery, and they start jacking up premiums or just excluding things that they won't have to cover anymore. So you're right, the older policies are more inclusive. They tend to be more.
Thank you for your question, Carter. And I'm going through the list that I kind of sent out. We've covered a lot of these. This is good. Brad and Amy, looking back, you know, what are, you know, 3 things that you wish you knew then that you know now?
Well, I think the main thing is that you have to be clear about what you do about this. You have to think about it in advance. It's not something you want to think about because you got a business to run, right? You got a million things to think about that are central to your business. However, if somebody came to you and said, you know, your business is going to about to take a $20 or $30 or $40,000 loss, you would sit up and pay attention to that. So the way to do that is to spend a little money and to educate yourself. There are a lot of people that are out there that can help you as well. There's some really, really great attorneys in this field, defense attorneys who are fed up with this, and who like in our case, our lawyer was very accommodating and frankly ate a ton of the costs just because they were so tired of dealing with this guy, Stuart Finkelstein, the lawyer for the plaintiff in our case, that they were just really willing to go to war over this. Not all attorneys are like that, but you can get good advice from them because they are concerned about the fraud that's happening, the abuse. But pay attention to it, learn about it. You know, just put it something that's it's a vulnerability to your business, and that
maybe write to your congressperson and see if you can get these things changed, because if all of us fight individually, we'll not get anything done. If we start to fight together, then we have a voice, and it could be very helpful to have people in our industries, in the small business industries, because they're really mostly just attacking small businesses because we're vulnerable. If we can join together with one voice, then there's a much better chance that they can make a change and get rid of these bottom feeders and give them one less avenue for making money for doing absolutely nothing. So yeah, Brad's right. You know, make the changes that you can make so that you're a little less vulnerable. There's actually these little signs that you can buy on like Amazon or whatever that are like, you know, if you're in a wheelchair, you know, let us know and we'll do our best to help you down the steps. You know, they actually have those signs printed up that you can put on the wall. Although I feel like that's more like advertising that you're a sitting duck, but you know, at least you can point to that to some degree that you're trying. But you know, as is so often the case with businesses like ours, there's not much you can do other than cover your butt as best you can. You can try to get your industries behind you in fixing the root of the problem, and that is what I would recommend.
Yeah, and I've spoken at length with Andrew Rigi, who is the head of the New York Hospitality Alliance, and you know he is aware of this. So you know he's a great resource. I really like that organization. So you know they have people that they can tap into. If you're struggling to find somebody who can help advise you on what to do to protect yourself, that's a good resource. But yeah, so there's, you know, it's a daunting threat that most people never think about until it clobbers you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I unfortunately, I have something else that I have to pay, another meeting that I have to join. So if there's any questions that anybody wants to ask me, in the next couple of minutes, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm going to have to drop off the call, by 8:15.
Sounds good. That's a good point. If anyone has questions, you want to ask Brad before he pops off. I'll quickly ask, when you were going through this at the beginning or even any part of it, did you reach out to any like city services at all?
Yeah, I did. I really didn't.
I mean, I actually did try to reach out to, I talked to connect Andrew Berman of the Greenwich Village, is it the Historic Society, whatever it is. And he pointed me in the direction of somebody from Chinatown who I think manages one of the BIDs there or something like that, to say, hey, is there anything you do? Can you recommend anything? And I never got a reply back. So that just pointed out to me that people in our industry are not trying to work together, where, it's all every man for himself, which was frustrating. It kind of taught me that lesson.
Thank you for that, Amy. Susan Kent?
Oh, thank you. It's logical to assume that you'd have allies, in the business community. It would also seem that you should have allies in the disability community, that advocates for people with disabilities want to see you, fix the problems. They don't want to see them being used. So has there been any sort of reaching out to advocates or, making alliances of that sort?
There's a bit of a division, frankly, in the ADA advocacy community, right? Because advocates want change. So some of them are of the opinion that, hey, you know what? This threat of a $30,000 or $40,000 settlement is making businesses comply, and nothing else has worked. So we're okay with that, right? The problem is that there are other people who are also part of the ADA community. They're like, well, wait a minute, we're not really down with this, and I'll tell you why. Because most of the time when these settlements are made, there is either no language, meaning zero requirement, that the business actually comes into compliance, or there is language, but there's no enforcement of it. So in other words, you look at these settlements, and some of them have no language, and there's no provision in these settlements that says the XYZ store, in the village has to fix X, Y, and Z violations that we allege. And that gives you the clear understanding that they don't care about. These lawsuits are not about curing problems.
And there's no legal requirement. There's no legal requirement that be a part of it.
Yeah, well, right. There's no requirement that be part of it. And what happens is the two sides come to an agreement outside of the purview of the judge. So the judge often doesn't even see what the terms of the settlement are. It's just like the two sides come to the judge. Have these two sides work this out and are in agreement? Yes. It's all, the whole thing is being settled, fine. As long as everyone's happy, fine. And that's it. The judge isn't, after the fact, going through and looking at what the terms are, just signing off on it. As long as everybody's good, get it out of my court. Sometimes there are provisions in there that say you have to come into compliance and fix this and fix that and fix the other thing, but no one ever follows up. So if you don't fix them, there's no consequences. So the people in the ADA community who are on, let's say, on the business side or on our side of this, point this out. And they also point out that the only people who are making money are the lawyers, not the actual people who've been victimized by these ADA violations. So it's a complex thing. But yeah, if you can start to court the ADA community and make it clear to them that we want both. We want businesses to come into compliance so that, people who have disabilities can access these businesses, but we also don't want a system that, is punitively, clobbering financially these businesses and in a way that only enriches these unscrupulous lawyers. So that's actually another good angle if you want to think about how we can change things, getting the ADA community to understand fully what's going on, and that businesses like ours actually do care about courting them and want them to come, want people with disabilities to come to their business, but they don't want to have to live with this threat of having to pay all this money to somebody who doesn't even care about their interests.
Well, and also, plaintiff, you mentioned in your case as being kind of exploited in this case. So, and that's to your point, Susan. And,
Yeah, and it wasn't kind of, it was 100%.
okay.
These lawyers are known for doing exactly that. That's what their whole MO is. I mean, Brad, didn't you say that this guy like netted $900,000 from this stuff recently?
Yeah, the attorney who was sued and frankly was convicted. He's been convicted of fraud in 2 districts, Florida and New York. The allegation was that he collected something like $900,000 in settlements from these suits. So listen,
you know, there's a big payoff for them. There is no incentive for them not to do this. There is only incentive for them to continue.
And you know, the other thing is that there are identifiable bad guys. There are law firms that do this over and over and over again, boilerplate lawsuits, the same plaintiff over and over and over again, like dozens of times, right? So those are the identifiable problem law firms and individual lawyers. So unfortunately, if you get sued, it's likely to be one of them. So listen, I'm so sorry that I have to drop out.
Thank you so much, Brad. Amy, if you have it, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Amy, if you still
No worries. If it's okay, I'm going to drop out as well because
Perfect.
I'm not feeling great.
Yes, no worries.
Happy to help anytime. If you want a direction to our lawyer, if you need one, just let us know.
Okay, great. Thank you again both so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, have a great night.
Thank you. I'm going to, I also wanted to ask, I'll open up the public session in just a second. I had asked Ronnie Wolf, who is on with us, is experiencing a similar case. So I was going to allow Ronnie, I'm going to promote you to panelist if you'd like to turn your camera on. If not, you can just, you'll be able to speak. So I just wanted, Ronnie, if you could, in just 5 to 10 minutes, kind of tell us what's going on in your case so we can kind of have a picture of what's happening in CB2 with these type of cases and the context.
Sure, I'll make it fast. Thank you all for hosting this. It's so I am a landlord of a small commercial space on Broadway, and it's within a co-op, and our tenant, which sells soap, has now been sued twice in the last 3 years. And initially it was because the bell had lost its battery. So I echo, in other words, the battery was dead. I echo the idea of creating a pathway to cure have a cure period, because just running across the street to Dwayne Reed would have fixed that. And we also, back in the first lawsuit was August of 2019. And shortly after, our tenant was dealing with it, but then they went bankrupt. Then we had their architect was working on how to cure the 4-inch. We have a 4-inch step off the sidewalk into the space. Our doors are landmarked, so we can't touch our doors. So we needed to create a ramp, but there was the pandemic, then there was going through landmarks. There was a whole thing that went on. Anyway, we did install a ramp, but initially they had an internal ramp, they had a bell, they had a telephone number, They had the sign. They still got sued, and in that case, the tenant settled for tens of thousands of dollars, and said they would do some things like the ramp, and they sell soap and they use a sink. So they got a portable sink that was lower to help, because they have a signature sink that was not ADA compliant at that moment. So they did fix little things that they said they would fix. This second lawsuit came in August of 2022. Now, there is a ramp, there is the bell. They check it every day. There are the signs. This is totally bogus. And in this case, we've spoken to litigators and things, and they said, if you pay off again, you will just be subject to another lawsuit. So in this case, do not settle. Tell them if they don't dismiss this lawsuit, and you will give them $1,500 to like kind of go away. You will take them to court and fight this to the end. So that's what we're doing this time. I mean, it's literally a 4-inch step that started all of this. So.
And have you had any dialogue with anyone in the any disability advocates?
So we've talked to disability advocates. We also talked to ADA lawyers. On the days that we got sued, Muji got sued, a bread company, a small bakery on Grand Street got sued, a flower shop got sued.
And tell us the exact address, if you don't mind. Just
458 Broadway, Grand Broadway.
Okay, so in the in the district,
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So, you know, you've seen that Lacoste got sued. You know, different places along Broadway are putting in these ramps that then the skateboarders use to jump over and stuff. It's really annoying. But, you know, our tenant has tried to do everything right after the first lawsuit, and this new lawsuit said that the doors were too heavy. But in all reality, there's a ramp, there's a bell, and there's a phone number, so and a sign.
And so the first lawsuit was in what year?
August 2019.
And then this lawsuit
is August 2022. 2 different lawyers, 2 different plaintiffs.
Got it. If anyone has questions for Ronnie, feel free to raise your hand, or I can always follow up if you have a question afterwards. And so now at this point, Ronnie, you're in this litigation process, or you're
right. We're seeing if they will accept. They have till December 16th or something if they accept the $1,500.
And so, so it's your tenant that's being sued, right? Okay.
The tenant and the co-op is being sued.
Okay.
A co-op commercial space it's a commercial space. It's a co-op space within the entire. Yeah. Okay.
I didn't realize.
So they did not get the, you know, we're an LLC, and they didn't sue the LLC because I don't think that they knew to. They knew to sue the co-op.
But somebody certainly could, right?
Absolutely. And our insurance, the LLC insurance, will not cover us because we were not cited in the suit. The co-op lawyer insurance could cover them, but we're going to try to push this through and litigate it if they're not going to settle. And we want it out there that we fight these things, because otherwise it will happen every year or every week or every month or whatever.
Got it. And my last question for you is, are you organizing like strategy with these other entities that you've mentioned that are getting sued, the flower shop, or the bakery, Muji, like, are you guys talking like, hey, we've all gotten hit by the same plaintiff, or?
I don't know who their plaintiffs are, and I did not organize anything. Did speak with them, and I think they paid the people, because the flower shop and the bakery have not changed their entrances at all, you know.
Got it. So they paid the settlement and they're, again, still vulnerable.
Again, yes.
Again, like tomorrow. Okay.
So that idea of creating a cure pathway is terrific.
Yeah, that was a really great point that was brought up. Wonderful. Well, Ronnie, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the meeting tonight and to share your story with us. I'll make sure that you, as the next of these series goes on, that you're included in making.
Thank you. I'm really happy you picked up this topic, because it's annoying and totally bogus.
Right, and especially at what's happening in the economy. This is
Right.
the exactly wrong time. It's never the right time, but it is definitely the wrong time.
Thank you.
I'm gonna move you back. I'm gonna move to, let's see, Ronnie, let me move you back 1 second before. Okay. Quickly, I forgot to share this during our meeting, but we'll go ahead and move to, if there's anyone else from the public that wants to speak on this with any sort of testimony, please raise your hand now. If not, I'm going to move into business session. So with that, I'm going to move us into business session. I'm going to quickly share my screen. Let me see. In case, and I meant to share this earlier, this is what Madam X looks like if you have not walked by it. I think this one on the left is the most recent, but that's the stairway that was referenced. I meant to show that earlier. And then the stairway here in front of behind the bike wheel, and this stairway here underneath the awning, and then the stairs coming into the place, I believe. So let me just unshare my screen. All right, so Janet.
I'm just curious, we have this gentleman from SBS, right? We don't, Jean, is this gentleman from SBS on our screen? No. Do we know if SBS is doing anything about this?
Yes, so SBS and the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities, and there's a report I can send out that was done like in 2019. So it's one of the links I did.
Sorry.
I'll put it back in the chat. So they have, here's how to deal with ADA lawsuits, and I just shared it there. Oh no, that's not it. That's not it.
But it's on their radar, and I apologize for not.
Oh, no, that's okay. It is on their radar. When Amy was talking earlier about Chinatown, there is a gentleman from SBS that's like the director of compliance that I want to bring in January, who went on this tour, this walking tour of different looking at small businesses and this specific issue of the lawsuits. And there's this link that is a joint effort of, here it is, some other outside organizations, as well as SBS and the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities. And it's like how to deal with an ADA lawsuit. And it does have a checklist on there of things to do, but there are obviously things that were brought up this evening that are a little more nuanced, that I think will be helpful to businesses. So I'd like to bring in SBS to see if they can do a presentation on that. There was also a gentleman at that's no longer with the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities, who is an architect by training that used to coordinate with the Department of Buildings, with landmarks, with SBS, specifically on accessibility. and certain types of waivers. I'm trying to find out with the administration change, he's since gone on to the MTA. And so I have not found if his role as the director of accessibility with someone who's a licensed architect that can speak to us there, because I think that would be a helpful joint presentation, but would have been way too much for tonight, and just making sure we had enough time to hear from Amy and Brad. So that's the goal. Is there any other thoughts on what we heard this evening? I see that we've got from one before, we've had David Gruber join us, and Mills since I first had introduced everyone. So welcome and thanks for being here. The other, let me go quickly. I sent out the September minutes. It seems so long ago. So I just want to formally, is there a motion to approve the September minutes?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Janet. Can I have a second from a committee member, please?
Second.
Thank you, David. Thanks,
Always
guys.
ready to help.
Thank you so much.
Attention, please.
So, I mean, to continue this discussion, I wanted to get that out of the way before I forget. I want to continue the discussion on what we heard. I mean, it sounds like I don't think we have a resolution here tonight, though I think there's a nugget of something here in terms of, and it's much bigger than us being CB2, but would be maybe to educate our new congressman, Dan Goldman, about this issue and his staff. And I know Darlene had put that in the chat, so thank you, Darlene, about this cure period. Again, this is much bigger than CB2, but it's maybe that's at least sending them our report of what we learned today. But I don't think we're ready for a resolution. And if anyone feels differently, let me know, because I think we've got to hear from these other pieces of what we would potentially need to advocate for at the city level, or something to send like a letter to our congressman, a resolution to our congressman. So if there's any discussion on that, let me know. If not, I'll quickly move. I had promised 8:40 and we have about 7 minutes, but I don't want to rush us. So I'm going to quickly share my screen one more time. And thank you guys all for being here. I know it, like I said earlier, it's a busy week. So our next meeting, we're not going to meet in December unless anyone has a topic or something comes up that we need to schedule a meeting, but I know it's a very busy time. So I have our next meeting is Wednesday, January 25th, 2023, kind of keeping with that last Wednesday of the month for now. And I just kind of put together, kind of thinking of what the next two series of this Title III ADA lawsuits thing could be. And I'm hoping for a presentation from SBS and the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities. So I'm working on trying to get that scheduled now that I've figured out who that person is at SBS, and then want to see if there's the new director of accessibility at MOPD that deals with landmarks and DOB, because I think, as I had said at exec, this touches a lot of other committees on the board, including SLA and landmarks, especially with all of our historic districts. And then I thought we did the West Side bids within the last year, but we haven't heard from the bids on the east side of our district. So that might be something that we can do. Again, I'm looking for input, or if you have any other ideas, I'm always open to hearing them. The Bleecker on Bleecker, we haven't talked about retail in a while. So I thought it would be good to kind of bring in some folks to talk about what we're seeing on the retail leasing and storefront vacancies. And then the last one is really just about well, if TikTok is still around, I don't know, the FCC and another government agency have said that it's a national security issue. So if TikTok is still around next spring, there are a lot of creators based in CB2 and TikTok creators that come into CB2 that really do paint a picture of our district. And there's some sort of interesting element there, I think. So that might be something that we cover a little bit. So it's everything from like TikTok creators who live in the CB2 area, and then there's some that are part of the Washington Square Park community. And one in particular, I won't get into the specifics of them, but I really would like it to be a real kind of diverse thing. So if you have any thoughts on any of these or another topic, feel free to hit me up offline or raise your hand now. But I think with that, if anyone has any new business to bring up, this would be the time to do it. If not, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. David and I are so helpful.
Thanks, guys. I know that we were light tonight, but I really think I'll put together a really thorough report. And I think that we will continue this dialogue. And I'll try to advertise our meeting a little bit more through some of the bids and whatnot. So thank you guys all so much. I will adjourn this meeting at 8:37. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.